Sup, guys? Smithy here. I'm coming out of retirement today to address one of the worst takes on a video game ever. I'm just going to read the title of this. Resident Evil 4 was pretty mid by Nintendo GameCube standards. Okay, so right off the bat, you have my attention, right? Resident Evil 4 is one of the most influential survival horror games of all time. It's industry defining, basically the blueprint of every survival horror game following Resident Evil 4. Last of Us, Silent Hill, like Silent Hill 2 Remake. I'm sure there are some other examples, even like non-horror titles like Red Dead Redemption have all taken notes from Resident Evil 4's over-the-shoulder camera perspective. So it is a very relevant game, and it will continue to be relevant for my lifetime, at least. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. So that title caught my attention. And not only that, the channel name as well, Harmon Smith. So not only is this guy having one of the worst takes I've ever heard in a video game of all time, but he's also LARPing as a character from one of my favorite games of all time, Killer 7. So I got to give it to him. So right off the bat, and I'm going to read off of a script like a little chud, just like this guy sitting at a corner playing with my belly button, move my glasses up and down. But this guy is saying that since Resident Evil 4 was originally a GameCube exclusive, it implies that the GameCube is a better system than the PS2. I will agree that the GameCube version is a far superior way to play the game because of graphical fidelity. But the reason why it doesn't make the GameCube a superior system to the PS2, and I also don't think that the PS2 is the best console of all time. I think the Wii is the best console of all time. Just because of the exclusivity on the GameCube and graphical fidelity does not mean that the console itself is better. The GameCube is a lunchbox, right? A powerful lunchbox. It even has a handle. But my point is, what kind of discs does the GameCube use? These tiny little like half discs, right? So the GameCube is like the Nintendo 64, where it has, the Nintendo 64 has a reliance on cartridges, right? So it's going to limit the amount of third-party support that the console is going to get, because you will have to manufacture games on half-sized discs. So it's not a one-size-fits-all situation, so you already got exclusivity there. And on top of that, Nintendo is a family-oriented company, okay? The reason why Nintendo took propriety over Resident Evil 1's remake and over Resident Evil 4 was so it could boost sales numbers and try to lure in more mature customers. That's why we're seeing more mature titles on the Wii. So Nintendo's trying to extend their customer base, right? So obviously, it only sold 1.6 million units, okay? Then they ported it to the PS2, and it found more success. So his next claim is, the people just hate the GameCube because it's Nintendo, and Nintendo are underdogs. And, once they ported it to the PlayStation 2, then it got all the praise it wanted because it was tainted by the Nintendo name. Guess what kind of games are on the GameCube? Mario, Pikmin, Zelda. Okay, you know what the PS2 has? Manhunt. So it's an entirely separate audience. Mature titles on the GameCube, I wouldn't say are like rare to come by, but they're definitely not as common as family-friendly titles on the system. So it's really no surprise that Resident Evil 4, as a mature title, would do better on the PS2, which has more mature games. That does not mean that the console that the GameCube is superior, or that people are hating on the GameCube just because it's Nintendo. No. You got entirely separate customer bases for each console. And I will say the one thing that I actually agree with Mr. Smith on is that RE4 was the peak of the series. I don't disagree with that. Resident Evil 5 was just Resident Evil 4, but with more action and boulder punching. Resident Evil 6 is like Max Payne without a bullet time mechanic. Resident Evil 7 was kind of a return to form, but it was also way too linear of a game for me to like actually sit down and replay it. I also think it was fairly easy. And then, kind of out of left field, Mr. Smith points out that, quote, Requiem got mogged by Mario Kart World in sales number and relevancy. Okay, do you want to know why Mario Kart World sold more than Resident Evil Requiem? Think about the last time they released a Resident Evil game. Okay? Not that long, maybe a year. Okay? The last game to come out before Mario Kart World was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which is basically just a rehash of Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U. Real quick, let's see when Mario Kart 8 was released. 2014. All right. So Nintendo doesn't release a new Mario Kart game for the regular Switch. They just repackage 8 and include some more tracks, okay? So the game is a decade old, okay? It's no wonder that this hiatus built hype around Mario Kart World, all right? That doesn't mean Mario Kart World is this fantastic video game that reinvented the series and, oh my God, it's the second coming of Christ. No. It also doesn't mean Requiem's a better game either. I'm not saying that. But obviously, Mario Kart World is going to sell more because there's been way more Resident Evil than there's been Mario Kart. This guy overall thinks that Nintendo enabled Resident Evil to be successful. So that's a blatant contradiction because it's not anybody who's preying on Nintendo's downfall. All right, that's ridiculous. Nintendo just so happened to have more processing power than the PlayStation. That doesn't mean that Nintendo enabled Resident Evil 4 to be successful, because clearly people were playing an inferior port and still purchased it more than the GameCube version. So it must not be about graphical fidelity then. So you just contradicted yourself there. Also, how is the GameCube a better console than the PlayStation 3? Like, I mean, you have some merit to that. I'm sure the quality of the games are better on the GameCube because you got quality over quantity. But not in graphical fidelity. The PS3 just looks better. All right? Resident Evil 4 will always be a relevant video game because it set industry standards and was a departure from the series. The reason the PS2 port was more successful than the GameCube version was because nobody wanted to own a GameCube because of its incredibly limited library. And if it's any testament to the amount of people who bought a Nintendo Wii after the PS2, it's that graphical fidelity really doesn't matter. So nobody really cares that the GameCube is 2 gigaflops better than the PS2. PS2 had a way better games library, and Capcom was like, yeah, our sales numbers suck. See ya. We made you the exclusive, only sold 1.6 million units. See ya. Because the fan base of that console is young people and families. So, closing thoughts to you, Mr. Smith. Enjoy being a Nintendo meat writer. Enjoy yelling at clouds. And enjoy thinking that the GameCube is somehow a superior system because of its graphical fidelity when you play games on Cheez-Its. They're this big. It's no wonder it had no third-party support. It's because nobody wants to have a nearly family-exclusive console to develop mature games on. That's why they went to the PS2. So yeah, maybe hop on Ozempic. Maybe get a brain transplant. I don't know. Can't help you, man.